Bonjour. Today we're going to look at the topic À quelle heure vas-tu à? À quelle heure vas-tu à? Of course, we need to find out the meaning of this question, and as we will learn, it will lead us to learn how to tell time in French, and with that knowledge, we'll be able to say at what time we go to different places. Before we go into the topic, let us see what we have already done. On va faire un peu de révision. We're going to do a bit of revision. So, the last time we looked at asking where someone goes on a certain day. So, we looked at the question, Où vas-tu? Which means where do you go? Now, what if we wanted to talk about, we want to ask someone where they go on Tuesdays? What would we say? We would say, Où vas-tu le mardi? So by adding le and then the day of the week, we're asking someone where they go on a particular day of the week. Où vas-tu le mardi would mean then, where do you go on Tuesdays? We also learned how to answer the question by saying where we go on a particular day of the week. So to answer Où vas-tu le mardi, we could say le mardi, je vais au, je vais à la, ou je vais al, and then the place name. Je vais au would be used before masculine place names that start with consonants. Je vais à la would be used before feminine place names that start with a consonant. And je vais al would be used before places that start with a vowel. So having gone through what we've already done and what we already know, let's dive into what the question actually means. You would have already seen the second half of the question, which is vas-tu à? And of course, the place name that we'd add afterwards. So from où vas-tu, we know that vas-tu means do you go, and à, we know that means to. When we say je vais à, it means I go to. So à quelle heure vas-tu à means at what time do you go to, and then we'll add the name of the place. Now let's talk about time, since the question is asking us about what time we go to different places. Do you remember your numbers? Well, they're going to come in handy when talking about time in French, because as you know, when we look at a clock, we see the numbers 1 to 12 and they indicate the hours of the day. Now in France and in Francophone countries, we must note that the 24-hour clock is used. So that just means that instead of saying 1 a.m. and 1 p.m., what happens is that after 12 p.m. or 12 noon, instead of going to 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. and 3 p.m., in France and in Francophone countries where the 24-hour clock is used, we continue counting up to 24. So instead of saying 1 p.m. after 12 noon, we're going to say 13 o'clock, and then 2 p.m. would be 14 o'clock, and 3 p.m. would be 15 o'clock, etc., etc. This is known also as army time when, the 24-hour clock is used. So that's something that you may have learned in other classes, so keep that in mind. So let's take a look at the numbers and which hours on the clock they represent. So first we have, starting from here, we have 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So 12 here, the 12 is representing 12 noon. So we're going from 1 a.m. to 12 noon on this clock. 12 p.m. as some would say, 12 noon. To say noon in French, you can use the word midi. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So let's summarize what we've just looked at on the clock. So So how do we tell time in French? Well, for AM, we have 1 heure for 1 AM, 2 heures for 2 AM, 3 heures for 3 AM, 4 heures for 4 AM, 5 heures 5 AM, 6 heures 6 AM, 7 heures 7 AM, 8 heures 8 AM, 9 heures 9 AM, 10 heures 10 AM, 11 heures 11 AM, and 12 heures ou midi for 12 noon or 12 PM. So notice that after each number we're adding the word heure, which means hours. So these are representing the hours on the clock. However, keep in mind that heure, H-E-U-R-E, is 1 hour. So when we're talking about 1 AM, 1 o'clock, it's 1 heure, H-E-U-R-E. But after that, where we have more than 1 hour, or after 1 o'clock I should say, it becomes 2 heures, 3 heures with an S at the end, because it's no longer singular. So it becomes H-E-U-R-E-S. So keep that in mind. What about the PM clock in French? So hopefully you'd have remembered your numbers past 12 up to 24 at least. Let's take a look. So starting from the same position, after 12 noon, we'd normally have 1 PM, right? But we're going to continue counting from 12. So we have 13 heures, or 13 for 13, 14 for 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, and then we have 24 for 24. At this point, when the 24 hours in a day have been completed, we know that it's now midnight. And to say that in French, we say minuit, minuit. Alright, so let's now take a look at the summary of what we've just looked at on the clock. So just as before, we add the word heure after each number to indicate that these are hours. So of course, this is a PM clock, so 13 heures is 1 PM, 14 heures 2 PM, 15 heures 3 PM, 16 heures 4 PM, 17 heures 5 PM, 18 heures 6 PM, 19 heures 7 PM, 20 heures 8 PM, 21 heures, 21 heures, that should be 21 with an E at the end, 9 PM, 22 heures 10 PM, 23 heures 11 PM, 24 heures 12 AM or 12 midnight. And of course, to say midnight, we say minuit. So if this proves tricky for you, if it doesn't match up in your head, just remember that we're adding 12 to every hour. So 12 plus 1 gives us 13, so 13. Because remember, it's like we're counting past 12 noon and continuing. Just like any other 24-hour clock. Instead of going back to 1 and putting PM, all we have to do now is to add 1 to 12 and we get 13 heures, 13. So it's almost like you're saying 13 o'clock. And then when it's 2 o'clock, you do the same, you add 2 to 12, you get 14, 14. And you keep doing the same thing until you get to 24, 24, by which time you would have reached midnight and the day would have been completed. So think about it that way and let it sink in for a bit. It's going to take some time to get used to. Now, having had that knowledge, or having gone through how the 24-hour clock works and how we say each hour in French, how would you say the following times? Go ahead and write them down. So feel free to pause the video while you write down the French equivalents of the times on the screen.